Clara had grown up in a small frontier town where every girl's fate seemed decided before she even turned 18. A place where gossip was sharper than knives and a woman's worth was measured by how quickly she could secure a husband. From the age of 17, suitors had come knocking at her father's ranch house door, some carrying flowers, some offering promises. But one by one they all turned away. Some whispered she was too plain, others grumbled she was too stubborn, and a few sneered that she had nothing to offer. The cruelest sting was not their rejection but the way the town twisted it into sport, calling her the forgotten girl, the woman no man wanted. Each refusal etched another scar on her heart until she no longer dreamed of white veils or golden rings. She buried her hopes under chores, dust, and the long shadows of the prairie. But Clara was not weak. Inside her burned a quiet fire, the kind of strength that refused to bow even when life tried to break her. Still, she resigned herself to loneliness, never suspecting that fate was preparing a different story, one that would shake the same people who mocked her. For destiny rode into her life on a weary horse one summer afternoon, when a cowboy named James stopped at her gate. A man hardened by trails and softened by loss. He came not seeking a bride, but water for his horse. Yet in that chance meeting, everything began to change. Clara offered him kindness without pretension, and James, unlike the others, looked at her not with judgment, but with respect. Over the days that followed, he returned again and again, under excuses of errands, but really to sit with Clara on the porch while the sun dipped low. They spoke of dreams, of stars, of books read by candlelight, and slowly, hope rekindled inside her. The town gossiped cruelly, laughing that the unwanted girl was wasting a cowboy's time. But James was not a man to heed whispers. He saw her strength, her honesty, her courage to endure loneliness without bitterness. And in time, he asked her father for permission to court her. Shock rippled through the town, but Clara's heart soared. Soon, she walked down the aisle with her head high, marrying the man who had chosen her when no one else would. Their love was not the town's kind of love. It was steady, unyielding, built on respect, partnership, and truth. A tiny heartbeat wrapped in her arms, the living proof that rejection could bloom into joy. Yet, with that daughter would come both joy and trials, storms that would test Clara and James in ways neither could foresee. But they would face it together, for their story was no longer about rejection. It was about resilience, about love that rose from ashes and turned whispers into silence. The first year of Clara and James's marriage was both tender and testing, like learning to dance in rhythm with the seasons of the land. The cowboy life was no gentle ride. It was hard, unrelenting, full of dust storms. Clara, who had once been mocked as too stubborn for marriage, proved herself more capable than anyone could have guessed. She rose before the dawn, baked bread in the dim light of the kitchen, and then stepped out into the fields beside James, her skirts catching dust as she helped mend lines and tend to animals. The town had expected her to falter, to break beneath the weight of ranch work, but Clara only grew stronger, and James, who had once thought himself a lone rider destined for solitude, found in his wife not just companionship but a partner whose determination matched his own. When Clara discovered she was carrying their child, joy and fear collided inside her. She had known rejection so long that she hardly dared believe she could now hold something as precious as a child of her own. James, upon hearing the news, wrapped her in his arms and whispered against her hair that this child would be their miracle, the proof that fate had always meant them to find each other. Months passed, and Clara's body grew heavy with the promise of motherhood. Neighbors who once whispered cruelty now looked with envy, though still some could not help but sneer that it was a miracle a cowboy and the unwanted girl could manage such happiness. Clara, however, no longer listened. She poured her soul into preparing for the child, sewing little garments by lamplight, singing softly to the life within her. When the day of birth came, the house echoed with cries both of pain and new beginnings. After long hours, when Clara thought her strength might fail, the cry of a baby girl filled the air. James, who had faced storms, wolves, and endless nights under the stars, found himself undone by the sight of that tiny bundle. They named her Hope, for she was the living testament to everything Clara had endured, and everything James had believed. holding hope in her arms. Clara felt every rejection of her past fade like shadows before dawn. She was no longer the girl no one wanted. She was a mother, chosen by fate and blessed by love. Raising a daughter in a land so wild was no easy task. There were droughts that withered crops, storms that threatened their cattle, and nights when sickness knocked at their door. Clara and James faced these hardships side by side, never wavering in their devotion to each other or their child. And as hope grew, so did Clara's understanding of her own strength. The woman who had once cried herself to sleep after yet another suitor's rejection now stood tall, unshaken by gossip, unafraid of hardship. That hope would never know the bitterness of being unwanted. The town, too, began to change its tune. It was not sudden, nor was it unanimous, but slowly people began to realize that worth is not determined by who accepts you or rejects you. It is proven by how you endure, how you rise, how you build a life despite the odds. Clara had become living proof of that truth, and though some would never admit it aloud, they could not deny what their eyes showed them. She was no longer the unwanted girl. She was a wife, a mother, and a woman who had carved her place in the world through courage and love. So, dear listener, as you hear Clara's story unfold, take her lesson into your own heart. Rejection is not the end of your story. It may be the beginning of the chapter where destiny finally finds you. And if her strength inspires you, if her journey touches something inside you, then make sure you subscribe to this channel. Because here, we will keep telling stories that remind you of your worth. Stories that will fuel your spirit the way Clara's does. Stories of resilience, hope, and love that overcomes every storm.